Hello, patron pals. Welcome to part two of this three-part interview with former police officer Kevin Holland. Some absolutely fascinating stories from Kevin's time as a police officer, working with the community on the Aylesbury estate, working with the makers of the bill as to whether they could or couldn't film on his beat, and how the bill helped not only police officers but the spirit of the police in the community as well. So plenty of gold dust in store. Sit back with a nice cup of tea and enjoy, and there'll be even more to come in part three as well. I hope you're enjoying this as much as I enjoyed chatting to the great man himself. Take it away, Kevin Holland.
Was there one any of the actors you personally identified with when watching, thinking he's really believable, or I can identify with that guy? Or
everyone, when they join as Jim Carver,
yeah,
everybody then wants to be, I'm going to refer to him as Jack from EastEnders because he's Jack from EastEnders.
Oh yeah.
It's the same. I was watching the bill the other night. I've been catching up on a few of the episodes, especially the latter ones. Ruby from EastEnders.
yeah,
she was in it.
Yeah.
She was a WPC in it a few years ago.
That's right.
And now she's running a nightclub in Walford. It's like that Pauline Quirk. She was a suspect mum in one episode, and then she's got her own sitcom. She's done all right off the back of the bill, isn't she?
Yeah.
So I look at them as because Jack is Jack. Do you know what I mean? So I remember mates who went on to be crime squad officers, and you could see how the way that they dressed, the way that they swaggered, and the doors open. The camera shots were brilliant. When the DS with his couple of DCs were behind, it's a big job, Sarge, and the doors swing open. It's exactly the same doors. They've got the chicken wire in the toughened glass, and they've got the safety sign, exactly the same as in the police. And the camera was down low, and it was like a belt-up shot, and it was like, yeah. Is it Gallagher? Was Gallagher a DS or something?
Galloway. John Salthouse, yeah. He was the first DI, yeah.
The DI, and he'd come through, and he's got a DI, and there's just a couple of little one-liners, but it was that swift, we're in control, don't worry about it, please. Where's my cup of tea? And, send them a uniform off in different directions to do their work. It was just, you could see the people whispering in their ears as they were acting. My sergeant would have done it like this. And you go, really? Right, let's give it a go as in an act. Do you know what I mean? They got that off. And I think that the small units and the breakaway, I remember one episode where literally it highlighted, there was somebody that either come back from maternity leave or come back from an injury. I forget the exact story. And to come back in, they were put onto a desk. It was either a missing persons desk or what was the old domestic violence desk. In those days, in the late 80s and early to mid-90s, there was literally a sergeant and usually a WPC coming back off of maternity leave. That was how it was to sit in the CRD office to deal with nothing but all the domestic violence and all of the missing persons. And that would have been it. One sergeant and one, usually a detective coming back off of maternity or something like that, or coming back from injury if they've got a desk job. And the bill highlighted that it was literally, a pile of paperwork with 12 mispers and there was, someone else had smacked his missus or something, and they've got to investigate all of this. And the work was sort of keep piling on. It's like, there's not enough of us to do this job, to show the frailties in the system. And we could be sitting there at home in the police section house or in the canteen at work watching it going, yeah, excuse the expression, the job was fucked when we joined, it was fucked when we was in it was fucked afterwards. There's always been those frailties, but the bill highlighted that. With regards to actual stories and characters, Reg Hollis would like literally take a young kid from a family under his wing. Instead of the hard-nosed cop, it was very, very subtle guidance and advice. And the telling off wouldn't sink until half an hour later. Like when your nan used to tell you off and you didn't realise you'd been told off until the following day.
Yeah.
Reg had a way with just dropping information, things like that. You can learn through acting. I mean, when I joined the police, I wanted to do what Mel Gibson was doing. I wanted to jump off balconies, off a roof, saving people. Yeah, come on. Now, this is the way to go. But it was almost like that at times. Yeah, so you do listen and learn, but I think they took as much from us. When I later understood how TV worked, they had to take as much from the police as what police officers took from them. the police were always there first, and the bill was always an emulation of the police. And then for those of us who weren't in the police, and our first experience of the police was the bill, it actually introduced us. Well, I knew what the collator was.
Yeah.
I knew what the canteen culture was because I'd seen it.
Yeah.
I knew what locker room chat was about. So I wasn't alien to it. And none of us who watched the bill in the 80s and joined in the 80s or 90s would have been alien to these things.
No, because you...
So it actually helped us. One of the really funny things I remember, it was, again, they were filming on one of the estates I was working on. Me and Colin, I'll never forget this. I was concerned because I had 2 days at this one road junction, which is where the honey wagon and the tea wagon, the centre for filming is. But they needed us there because of the estate where it was. So 2 full days, me and my mate Colin. My mate Colin, he policed the Lawrence inquiry from day one at Hannibal House on the Elephant.
Right, okay.
So he done it 5 days a week, and I done it 3 days a week with him. Because it was me and him shared the same beat, but he done half it, I done the other half. So we were there for that 9 months, and then we had all these other things going on. We're trying to keep a lid on all of our community issues as well. So anyway, we was working together this day, and was walking from the Elephant to where they were filming in Doddington Grove. And we go past this school, and it's got like 12-foot high chicken wire fencing. There's the pavement, there's the playground, and there's all the kids up against the railing, calling your names and all the rest of it because you're a police officer. So as we've walked along, the kids come over, and a few of them are getting a bit brave. A few of them are just there being cheeky, as kids are. They get a little bit brave. And as we've come along, I've gone, here, listen to this. I says, yeah, now we've got the cameras in the lifts, in the stairwells. I think those drug dealers are going to go away. And I said it just loud enough for 2 or 3 of them to hear. And then I looked round, and they've gone like this. I was like, right, you didn't hear that, did you? You didn't hear anything, did you? You did not hear that the policeman said there's cameras in the lifts in all of those blocks of flats over there to catch the drug dealers, did you? No, PC Holland, no. And with that, they've gone off and told everybody, haven't they?
Brilliant.
So that problem with those gangs for a few weeks in those locations stopped. Just went. And there was another time, again, I think it wasn't a filming thing, because some of the filming, it would be a dedicated officer. You might be 2 months, but like 3 days here, 2 days there, for like Snatch and things like that they were there for a few weeks. And you couldn't be abstracted all the time. You've got other duties to do. Yeah, I wasn't on relief. I was a community officer. I had my area, so I wasn't doing earlys, lates, and nights and in the cars. It was just me. The way that we used to try to keep a lid on things. So I knew that I had a 2-week project. It might have even been the Peckham Youth Project, which was a summer project where you'd go as a non-uniform police officer, but I'd be taking the kids to Quasar, the laser place, and this is like the gangs of Peckham and everything. So this was really, really good. And especially when my missus turned up, that broke down barriers because she's black. So that broke down loads of barriers. I didn't marry her. I married her because 30 years later, we're still brilliant together. I didn't marry her to break down barriers. But when people locally in Peckham and Walworth and Camberwell saw you with a black woman, and they knew me as a police officer, that really did break down barriers as well. Not that I'm a racist. I'm the complete opposite of. But their perception of police officers were completely changed just by that visual thing they could see. That was quite helpful. But one of the stories, I was talking to a mate of mine, he's a chief superintendent now. He should have retired. He's done about 31, 32 years because he was on mounted. And I says to him, can you remember when such and such happened? And I was going to be away for 2 weeks. All I'd done was I put a requisition request in for the mounted branch for 2 days a week for half an hour to walk through my beat. So you had 2 police officers on horseback between 6:30 and 8 o'clock of a summer's evening, 2 days a week, when everyone can see them, and it calmed everything down. Following year, I've done it with helicopters.
Wow.
This is how in the police it works, right? Had a mate who worked in the control room who shifted that job to go and work for India 99, the helicopters. So put a phone request in and said, like, if you're going on any jobs and you're flying over this location, on the way back, provided it's not out of the way and it doesn't encroach, can you just hover, do 30 seconds? And I would give them literally a 10 square yard grid reference of where I wanted them to hover. Yeah, they stopped doing it in the end. It was in the papers and all sorts. It wasn't just with me. We were all doing it.
Right.
And we were hovering in drug dealers' back gardens. And blocks of flats looking straight at them. Which apparently, I don't know if that actually is true, and I don't know if that actually happened. I wasn't there, but apparently it happened. You might be able to do that nowadays. I don't think they'd be able to say that they've done it nowadays.
One of my favourite elements of the bill from a storylining perspective is occasionally they'd have some red tape in the storyline where they say, well, it's not in the public interest. You know, they know who the villains are, they know what they've done, but they can't arrest them for political reasons or the public interest, which you'd always assume the public interest would be, well, we'd want them behind bars sort of thing. But I suppose that was always something I enjoyed with the bill.
Nobody liked Conway. He was the chief inspector, wasn't he? Once they leave inspector, they lose reality or touch with the base.
Right.
But they haven't quite made it to senior management, but they think they have.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
And people like me who had no aspiration at all for promotion, it was all about policing. People like me would remind them of this on a very regular occasion. You've got to. So no, I know where you're coming from, especially when you've got the PCC whisper, the police crime commissioner whispering in the chief superintendent's ear, get on top of a particular problem because the MP is getting into his ear. And the reason the MP is because the person who backs the MP's campaign. So it's all gone round in this insidious little circle. Whereas some of us couldn't give two fucks about the politics behind it all. And the politicians get exactly the same as the members of the public. And that's why I think I ended up with a wall like this, because politicians wanted to come for a walk with me. They wanted to know how we were successful. And that was because we didn't say, yes, sir, no, sir. We said, how are we going to get this done, sir? It's different. I promised I was going to give them a crime-free week. I had no choice but to deliver it or die trying. I had no choice because I'd committed publicly to do that, and you've got to see it through. So the governors had to come with me, with the chief inspectors. I mean, it worked in our favour as well. There was a point when you were home beat, you should only really do 2 or 3 years because you can get too close.
Okay.
Even without realising it, yeah? And also, people who are in one role where they've got authority, not of rank, but authority within the community, are more susceptible, and it's a fact, to corruption. And I'm not talking about backhanders. I'm talking about that sort of behaviour where the phone call to the MP, getting things done. But it works the other way as well. So let's say, for an example, might be an imaginary story here, that a certain police officer might have been told that his 3 years is up and he's now got to look for another beat. But he doesn't want to move beats. He's got unfinished business.
Yeah.
So the mayor or the leader of the council or the MP might phone the chief superintendent and say, you've only been there for 6 months. You're only here for another 6 months. He's here for 5 years.
Yeah.
And the phone, it might be a case of the chief superintendent then bites his tongue and says, let's give him another 1 year extension and just to, so it worked both ways. The police officer could also work that influence, use that influence for provided it's for the betterment of the community. I think that's a good thing. This is a famed story for me. Back in 1998, 1999, big thing with gang robberies, big thing. Mobile phones were getting nicked, big thing. Like they are today, but this was big. At the time, it was a new thing, so it was big. So I used to put on a boxing show with the local boxing clubs. My chief superintendent's father-in-law ran a boxing club, and the first job he gave me when he joined our police station, he said, go and meet this bloke and do what he says. Yes, sir. Off I go. I'm now, 2 days later, I'll turn out to be the vice chairman of the world's longest running boxing club, the Lynn Athletic Club in Wells Way in Camberwell. It sits between the North Peckham estate and the Aylesbury estate in this big old, the Camberwell Baths. So I become the vice, and I start dragging kids in off the estates into the boxing. And we use that. So we put on, and then you get friendly with the mayor, you get friendly with, because you're the local policeman. So the mayor says, right, I want to do a charity boxing show for the Mayor of Southwark's Common Good Cause this year. So, okay, Bill, so we'll put a charity boxing show on. So we do it the week before Christmas. at the Elephant and Castle. We get 500 tickets printed. I'm in charge of the tickets because I've nothing. Otherwise, in boxing, everything will get divvied up amongst people, and I wanted it all. Which it's not a bad thing. These people contribute, but I wanted every penny to go to the charity. So I thought, I know what I'll do. I'll go around all of the pubs and I'll get the pubs to sponsor the tickets. So they can either have 5 £10 tickets or 10 £5 tickets. But either way, I want 50 quid out of them. And I'll give them some tickets and they can give them to their locals. But I'll say that this pub sponsored this event. Well, we had about 15 or 20 pubs in SE17 all around close to the Elephant and Castle, didn't we? So I went to all these pubs and I had to do licensing visits once every 6 months anyway with the licensing officer because they're on my beat. So I went round there and I told them how much they were going to give me. And then I also took the tickets back off of them. And I gave the tickets to the kids in the street.
Nice.
And said,
nice.
That's from that pub. So all of a sudden, respect. Yeah, that link was forged. Older people, younger people helping, a bit more. So that was forged. But all the publicans were, oi, where's my fucking tickets? You promised me. Whoa. Oh, get on the fucking phone of mine. Oh, I know the DS and all this sort of stuff. Just like it would be on the bill.
Yeah.
And I'd say, now about that license application you wanted for New Year's Eve.
Yeah, nice. Yeah.
And so if the police were going to bribe the publicans, I've got no problem with doing it, providing the beneficiary of that is the community that we all serve.
Absolutely.
You know, so things like that were really, really good. That was good side of policing because that was a little bit of a game, a little bit of a. There was a conversation here and a conversation there. It went on for 6 or 7 weeks, and all of a sudden, you see 500 kids, gang members that were usually fighting each other's turf, were there at a boxing arena. The first time they'd ever seen live boxing, and they were watching their peers from the local estates doing it. The gyms were full the following week. Full.
I can only imagine because you're so passionate about this and so involved. I mean, how on earth, if you ever had downtime, did you actually rest your brain and rest for you?
People like me don't, and that's what I've identified. We got married. It took a long, long time for us to have children. So in that time, we ploughed everything into our work. It was a distraction. We couldn't have kids. We did in the end, but we couldn't have kids first 7 years. So we put our whole life into our work without realizing what we were doing. So she was extremely successful in what she was doing. I was extremely successful, not as in promotion or money, or not that sort of success. My aim was to have a crime-free week. That's all I cared about. I wanted to walk around and not do any writing. I wanted to have a fag and have a cup of tea on the roof, watching the kids playing basketball or football, or the old ladies planting flowers, or somebody picking up lit. I didn't want to be chasing people on bloody mopeds and drug dealers. Get rid of them out of my beat. And I used the community to do that. So I wanted an easy life. So the harder you work, the easier it gets. And in the end, I went for a year without arresting one person. Not one. The crime was at its lowest. We went a whole week without having any crimes reported. I'm not saying that didn't happen, but it was because of that level of intense community cooperation. We let them think we were everywhere. We created an omnipresence, but it was only me. But PC Holland spent 5 minutes at that school where 500 kids were going in, and then he'd spend 5 minutes at that school where they were all coming out. So nearly 1,000 kids have all seen PC Holland once that day. And then the following day, you switch it around. You do that school in the morning. So all of a sudden, they go, you were here last night and now you're here again today. But I had to get the sergeant to not keep abstracting me, to ring fence me and say, you are the permanent beat officer for that neighbourhood. That was quite good because it then allowed me to develop plans. So I had some really good friends in particular, Lisa and Ray, friends of the wife and her boyfriend. We used to go out like all young couples in their 20s and early 30s, go out for dinner and round each other's houses when we were allowed to.
Yeah.
We said, okay, what we're going to do, we're going to plough 100% of our support and attention into you for this year. So Lisa got it. She had 3 counsellors, 3 careers advisors, 3 close friends. The following year, we put all of our effort into my missus. And then the following year was into Ray, and then the following year was into me. But all the time we were building each other up. So I was talking about saying, you know, I want to communicate with people. I want to be able to I need to get information out. So I've got these posters and I've got the newsletter I can put up in the library. And my mate Ray, and I said about, every Thursday I've got the Southwark News. I could put a little column in there because people read that local or the South London Press. It's about getting information to people about community initiatives. Let's just keep this going. And it was 100% momentum for 5 or 6 years. And Ray come up to me, he says, look, what you need to do is to tell all of the people the same thing at the same time. And it just like click. So I started writing. I learned how to write. And I started writing a newsletter. And I've still got every single newsletter that I wrote. And it ended up, it's actually called, and I left this with the commissioner when I met him, and I broke into his office 6 months later to get it back. It's called the Crap File. The Crime Reduction Advanced Program. The most significant things that I've done as a police officer, I've kept them. So the first one, after 9/11, the police needed to build a communication system, and it was an email message system. So counter-terrorism and Westminster Council put some money together, and I was brought in to help develop this communication system. So I was taken off of the streets and into an office in Westminster. And we invented something called the Westminster email message system. People could subscribe, and you could just say, right, I live in Westminster, or I live in this ward, and I'm interested in crimes around hotels. And on a daily basis, we would try all the different types of crimes that are happening and send out preventative information to those people who wanted to receive that information. So basically, we invented Facebook and Twitter.
Yeah.
So I learned about communication from these newsletters. And because of the newsletters I was doing, and I saw the response from the mass, 3,600 newsletters, all delivered at the same time, within minutes of each other across, this whole estate. And everybody, we'd done it on a Sunday evening when we knew the vast majority of people would be at home. Who's that at 7 o'clock on a Sunday evening in the middle of January?
Yeah.
PC Holland again, isn't it? Well, it weren't. They got a bit of paper with me all over it, but it was the security guards and the tenants associations delivering it for me, 30 of them, a block each. So they used to deliver these newsletters for me. So I got into communications very quickly. Now, this report here, I'm not going to show you the ins and outs of it, but it was called the Aylesbury Community Concerned Life Skills Library. So me and the missus, Lisa and Ray, were down at Greenwich on a Sunday morning. So we've gone to the market, we've had breakfast down at Greenwich on the river, lovely it was. There's a bookshop, and this bookshop has got all of these books in for £1. So I go in, I say, how do you do that? And he says, we wait until it's the end of publisher's run, and we buy the end of stock, that Waterstones, that, and they sell them all for like a tenner for a box. And you might get 50 books in there. It's pot luck, but it's literally... So I went and bought a book called The Writer's Guide, and I wrote a letter as a police officer to every single book publisher in the country. And I asked them for end of stock books to build a life skills library for the people of the Aylesbury estate. And it was everything. We got the how-to books, how to claim more benefits, how to set up a business. And then there was dictionaries, and there was encyclopedias and knowledge books. And this is the days before everyone had the internet. This was 1996, 1997. Yeah, it was only just starting to work out what email was. So we built this library, and all the books that were left over, children's books, we then filled all of the local school libraries. And then we've done a press release and sent it out to all the papers. And the only newspaper that never published it, right? But the following day, they started the Sun's Schools for Books or Books for Schools campaign with Walker's Crisps and all that sort of stuff. No, it's brilliant.